And our first item on the agenda tonight is a 2016-2017 audit, which is completed by Weston Company.
All right. My name is Jill Tice. I was the manager on the engagement. Amy Pedrick, the partner, is also here. The hard copies are in front of you. We'll just hit some of the highlights. Starting on page 1. Page 1 is the first of 4 audit opinions that we provide for the district. This opinion is on the financial statements. And at the bottom of the page, page 1, the heading opinions, it does state that in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly. That's what's called an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion and the highest that we can give. And that is what the district has received in the past. Starting on page 3 is the management's discussion and analysis. This is more of a narrative. It hits the highlights, compares 2016-2017 to 2015-2016, and discusses some of the items that will have an impact on the future of the district. Skipping to page 12. Page 12 is the statement of net position. So this shows all of the assets and liabilities of the district, including the long-term assets and long-term liabilities. As far as long-term assets, that would be the capital assets, the buildings and equipment that the district owns. As far as liabilities, just a couple items to note. The bonds payable that the district owes are split on this page into 2 numbers. They're split between the amount that is due in the next year and the amount that is due after that period. And then the bottom of that page 12, net position, that is just the difference between your assets and your liabilities. And it does have a few different categories. The restricted net position are the reserves that have been set up for specific purposes. Page 14.
Sorry, what was that restricted thing?
The restricted, at the bottom of the page 12, there's various reserves. A reserve for employee benefit accrued liability, a reserve for debt service, capital reserves. Those are the money that the district has set aside for particular purposes. Page 14 is the balance sheet by fund. So this shows for the 4 funds that the district had, the assets and liabilities. Just to go through the basics, the debt service fund is the money that is held specifically to pay debt. The school lunch fund shows the cafeteria activity. The special aid fund is for grant activity. And then the general fund is everything else. At the bottom of that page 14, you will see the total fund balance for the general fund at the end of the year was just under $5.7 million, and that is up just over $430,000 compared to last year. Page 16 is the statement of revenues and expenses by fund. For each of those 4 funds, it shows the activity for the year. And at the bottom, you will see for the general fund, the revenues were greater than the expenses by $434,217 for the year. Just a couple items to note, the revenue and expenses for the special aid fund always equal each other because the grants, you spend the money and then are reimbursed for that amount. Page 18 shows the fiduciary activity. So these are the funds that the district holds on behalf of others. The private purpose trust, the first column, that is the scholarship funds that are held. And then the agency funds include the extracurricular, the extra classroom activity, and any payroll deductions. Page 19 through 45 are the footnotes. They explain the accounting policies of the district and give more detail on some of the financial statement values. Just to hit a couple, on page 25, it goes through some of the pension information for the district. The district is a member, of course, of the employee retirement system and the teacher's retirement system for the state, so it gives more detail on that. And then on, page 45 is the only new note for this year, and that is just a disclosure of the tax abatements. So all districts have to disclose the amount that the property tax revenue was reduced due to the pilot agreements that are in place. So on page 45, you will see that the property tax revenue for the district was reduced by just over $43,000 due to those pilot agreements that are set up by the county. Page 46 is the first of the supplemental schedules. Page 46 shows the revenue for the year for the general fund for your budget to actual comparison. At the bottom of the page, you will see total revenues exceeded the budget by $953,000. That was due to getting more BOCES aid than expected, and also some more excess cost aid. Page 47 shows the expenditures for the year.
Excuse me, could you just repeat the last thing you said? I didn't quite catch it.
Yes, so the revenues for the year for the general fund were greater than budgeted due to both getting more BOCES aid than expected and also more excess cost aid from the state than expected.
Thank you.
Page 47 shows the expenditures, comparing the actual expenditures to the budgeted amounts. And at the bottom of the page, you will see that overall total expenditures, you underspent the budget by $582,000. Page 51 shows two schedules. The bottom schedule is the real property tax limit. The district is supposed to have no more than 4% of next year's budget in unassigned fund balance at the end of the year. But at the end of 2017, the district did have 9.9%. So you were above that limit. Page 54 is the second of the audit reports that we provide. The district spent more than $750,000 of federal grant money, so we have to perform what's called a single audit where we test grants. There's two opinions that are provided related to the single audit. They're both clean, unmodified opinions as well. Page 58 shows the actual federal grant spending for the year. It details out each of the grants that money was spent on and the amount spent, and there's no new grants for this year. Page 64 shows the extra classroom balance. So as of year end, the district had just under $64,000 that was held for clubs. So these are the students' funds, and the board has oversight of them since they are within the extra classroom balances. And then page 65 details out each of the clubs, their activity for the year. The final section of the report starts on page 67, and this is our management letter. So any areas for improvement are included here. First, we list out any items from last year and give the updated status on those, and then any new items. We do have a couple of comments related to the extra classroom activity funds, just due to the fact that the state has a lot of requirements for those funds and feels that they should be a way to teach students business procedures. But the testing that we performed did note that this has improved compared to the past. On the next page, there is a comment related to the district being over the 4% limit, and then just a couple of comments related to personnel files and purchasing. Overall, the audit went very well. The business office, Leah, always does a great job. It's always very ready for us. Overall, it was a very good audit.
Can I ask you to explain the $26 million that we went by in terms of the state change next year?
Yes. So if you look on page 12, in the liabilities section, currently in the amounts due and payable after 1 year, there is a $7 million liability that is called other post-employment benefits. So the district and all districts are required to have evaluation done of the amount that will be due in the future for retiree health insurance. Currently, the district is recording $7 million of that liability. Next year, the accounting pronouncements have changed, and all districts will have to recognize the full amount of the liability. Up to now, all districts have been recognizing it over time. Next year, the full amount has to go on. So next year, approximately $26 million will be as that liability instead of the $7 million. That is for all districts. So it won't just be Canajoharie that suddenly has a large deficit, and there is no way in New York State for the district to set aside any money to pay for that. There's no type of reserve that can be set up to fund it. It just has to be paid as you go along.
And there also will not be any explanation of that by the state. So in other words, people in our district will look at this and it will look horrible, and there won't be any explanation from the state to help assist with that communication.
One of the things that you can do, though, for a description on that is in the management's discussion and analysis section that Jill had said there's some narrative in there. that's where the district has the chance to be able to explain some of the significant changes. So while it's not going to be right up front and easy to see, it will be in the first 10 pages, and that is a place where that can be explained to the reader. But yes.
For next year.
For next year. Yep.
I just have a question. For instance, on page 12, it shows the liability, for instance, unemployment insurance reserve, it has a deficit of $392,000, correct?
That's the unrestricted. The unemployment insurance reserve has a balance of $111,800. The unrestricted fund balance, the amount left over is the negative.
Or if we look at the school lunch program, for example, we have minus $116,000. Am I correct in reading that? On the next page, page 13.
So what these statements are, these 2 pages, is these are on that, like Jill had said, these are the long-term picture, your long-term assets and long-term liabilities. So this has all those expenditures for adding that other post-employment liability on there. It's adding depreciation expense. It's adding pension stuff. So the school lunch program doesn't have a deficit of $116,000. When you do the full accrual, it's saying we had expenditures, including other things such as depreciation of $504,000. Specific grants and specific charges for services relating to school lunch were offsetting. But then there's all those other revenues down below. So if you really want to look at the school lunch program, the more meaningful page would be on 14. Those are the funds, and that's how the district keeps their books and records. So it's taking out all that long-term stuff that just mucks up the financials to the reader.
Because I'm wondering, with all these deficits, you say we had $500,000 underspent on the budget.
But
it seems like we got a lot of places to spend it.
But again, that's on that full accrual method. So if you look at the school lunch fund on page 14, you have a positive fund balance of $32,111. And that's what's challenging about these financial statements. All year long, you're looking at your funds, you're looking at what you do for the general fund and the voters' budget and all that kind of stuff. And then you get these year-end financials, and they're in there, but also in there is this long-term picture that kind of is not how you're seeing the books and records, month to month at your board meeting, so it kind of skews things a little bit.
What is the difference between the long-term and this year's?
So the long-term it's presented as if you were a company. So it has your fixed assets, and those assets are depreciated, and that's an expense. It has your expense for your other post-employment benefit liability. It has your expense for the GASB 68, the pensions. The funds are on what we call a modified accrual basis of accounting, which when you buy a bus or you purchase land or you buy equipment, it's an expense. You don't put the asset on the books. So there are different methods of accounting, and you actually have to converge all the funds together, do some entries to get to the long-term basis.
This is stuff we're not supposed to understand.
Sort of. But for the board, the most meaningful is the funds, because that's what you're looking at. That's what you're coming up with your general fund budget that you put out to your voters in May. That's what you look at more frequently, and that's more meaningful, I feel, for the board.
Thank you. So it's very unclear to me.
It's about clear as mud, isn't it? These things.
Any other questions? Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have public comment. And this is your opportunity to bring issues to the board after you make comments. The district clerk will read the names of those who wish to address the board, and comments may be up to 5 minutes in length. In an effort to respond more efficiently and effectively to public questions, questions will be assigned by the board president to the appropriate personnel for follow-up. Within 1 week, a response will be provided to the community member and shared with the board. The response will be one of the following: either a phone call, an email, a letter, or a meeting. And at the next meeting, a summary of responses will be shared immediately following the public comment. Thank you. And
Samantha Field.
Hello, I'm Samantha Field. And I'm just, thanks for having me be able to speak. I'm just here to talk about the student representative's job. on the Board of Education. She is a highly qualified individual who deserves to be on this board, and she is well respected among all of the teachers, staff, and students among the school. She should not be censored in what she says to the board, as it has come to not only my attention, but others' attention in the school. I will not mention, but it has come to my attention that she has been approached and called down to the office several times to be talked with about her board report that she is about to give. Yes, I understand that so some of the administrators would like to talk with her about her board report before she gives it to the Board of Education, but honestly, she should be able to say whatever is on that board report, because that comes from all of the students in the school, not just her. She is not going to come up and say something disrespectful or say something against anyone personally or insult or just say any misdemeanors at all. That's not the person she is. Again, she is an outstanding individual and highly qualified for her position. And we all respect her, as you should, all of you should too. So I would just like to make sure that everything that's on that board report is allowed to be said, and that none of the administrators are able to tell her, no, you cannot bring that up to the board, or no, you have to go and solve that problem yourself, okay? I just want to make that clear. Whatever she says, I hope you're able to either A, solve the problem, or B, make sure you plan ahead for the following school year and make that problem at least better. That's all I have to say.
I'd just like to thank you for bringing that to our attention so that we can address it and, and get to the bottom of it. So I just want to thank you.
Jennifer Field? No, sorry.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Field. I just have a question, because last year it was talked about having one-on-one computers, and being a teacher in a school with one-on-one computers, I was just curious as to where we were at with that, because I haven't seen anything or heard anything, and maybe I missed it somewhere on the website or something like that, or some communication, and it was just something that some people I heard talking about, and I thought it would be good for everybody to know where we're at with that technology integration. That's my question.
No, you're fine. There was no one else.
Moving on, next on the agenda are discussion items, and the first is the quarterly budget report.
Oh. I know. Let me pull that.
Well, we all have it on the screen.
We have it on this, if it's. Well, they do, but.
Yeah.
It's a little.
So this is the quarterly report from July through September, first of the year. And this is a summary report. Looks the same as we've been doing all along. And the final number, actually I checked it compared to last year's September report, and it's like almost exactly the same. And not everything has been was recorded through September for this report, just with the timing of the board meeting and everything. So, are there any questions?
I had two. One is, I can't really read it because it's this way, but anyhow.
We're sorry.
I read it at home. I think the first line actually is BOE budget.
Yes.
And it says $8,000 of our $17,000 is encumbered. And I was wondering, what is it encumbered for? Because I don't feel like we've been spending all this money.
We have the new dues that are gonna be paid out of there,
So that amount is encumbered and just hasn't been paid yet, and that was like 6,500, I think. And there were some small amounts for, we do some advertising on there for like the Leader Herald, Recorder for Jobs, that are posted, little things like that, and I'm not
The main one is the high school.
Yes, yes. That's the big one.
So I had a similar question. How are we defining encumbered? Is it something that we've already committed to, or is it stuff that we anticipate?
So like all the salaries at this point are encumbered, so they're all in that second class column.
What about
all the
if-
contractual salaries.
Okay, but what about if, like your example of job ads, what if we anticipate we're gonna run job ads in March? Is that showing up in the encumbered column or not?
Yes, an estimate is put in there for a year, so.
So if something's budgeted and anticipated, it's showing up as encumbered, even though we could still decide not to do it.
Yes.
I have a trouble with that.
Well, it's all based on estimates from last year, really. You know, we know, like last year we spent this amount on, just go with the ads or whatever. So that amount is put in there. So it's already set aside, so we already have an open purchase order for that. Because we need to have a purchase order.
I understand financial planning, that aspect, it makes a lot of sense, but from a making decisions perspective, it doesn't really show us what monies we haven't spent yet and what monies we can still make decisions around. And that's the piece that I get uncomfortable with. I totally understand from a financial planning perspective, I get that, and that makes a ton of sense.
I just one more, and this was, I don't know, I've never noticed this before, we have an expense for the archives. I didn't even know we had an archives. I was just wondering, what's involved with the
That's
archives?
the records management. We have someone that comes in and we pay her to do that. So that's what
She
that
just
is.
files records?
Boxes down in the basement.
So we could find them again, maybe?
Yes.
Do we do anything electronically from an archive perspective or not?
No.
No.
Some things with my quotation stuff, that's.
Yeah, right now everything's in boxes. Any other questions? Next is the student representative report. All right, Danielle?
So, I just want to put it out there. I want to thank Samantha for her public comment. I appreciate that a lot. I also want to put it out there. I really, really appreciate this job. It's something that I have looked forward to ever since it's been announced that a student could be a representative on the Board of Education. And it's never my intent to make this school look bad at all. I really do appreciate going to this high school. It's a great, great place and somewhere I've been the entirety of my life. And just, I really, really appreciate this, and thank you everyone for allowing me to do this. So I'm going to start off with the homecoming dance. This year's homecoming dance was a major success in my opinion compared to many other years. Many freshman students attended the dance. But also, a rare occasion, we had like a lot of students from higher grades attend the dance as well. This dance was put on by the student council. All the student council members made baked goods. Everyone was really enjoying, even if they weren't dancing, just like hanging out with their friends. I know I was behind the DJ booth with AJ and Maddie. This year's homecoming king and queen were Madison Coble and Joe Tremblay, and that was voted on by, it was picked by teachers, voted on by students, and everyone was really happy. All right, also something I wanted to bring up again, because I brought it up like a couple meetings ago, was the Student Council McDonald's night. Our Student Council is going to be holding a McDonald's night on Tuesday, October 17th from 5 to 7. All the proceeds that are going to be raised by this event are going to go help the Hurricane Harvey relief at the Harmony School in Texas. and we really want to make a ton of money at this event to add on to everything that we made at our car wash bake sale a few weeks back, because that was major success. So any more money that we can make with this McDonald's night is really going to help some students out. All right, and then issues. Me and Mrs. Grimshaw and also me and Mrs. Gleason have had discussions about these issues, and they are have been discussed, and we have found out more information about them. One of the issues was flies in the windows. I've noticed on the upper level of the school that there are flies, and other students have pointed out to me like some bees as well in between the glass and the screens of the windows. This can be kind of like off-putting to see like dead flies in your windows when you go to open the window. But this we have made aware of Mr. May and the custodial staff, and we're going to they're going to be inspecting that. So that's great. So that's pretty much resolved. And also another thing was the varsity soccer night games. It was brought to my attention by a student that the boys and girls varsity soccer teams were being told that there were concerns about possibly no night games being for the varsity soccer teams next year, and each team has only had one night game this season. Now, after looking into some more research with that, it is by the Western Athletic Conference law states that soccer games cannot start any later than 4:45 unless both teams agree on that. So that's one thing that I can tell, bring to the students and notify them about. I think it's a great experience to be able to go to these night games. If anyone was there last night, you probably heard me. My throat is very sore today. It was an awesome game. Even though they lost, we have so much school spirit here, and it's really a great thing to see. All right, and that's my report.
Danielle, I think we can answer Samantha's concern. You and I met. Is there anything on here that I asked you not to put on here?
Just the changing of some words in the...
Correct, and what was the word? So let's say why.
Under the varsity soccer night game section, we talked about, I had put the word rumor in there, which is not something exactly I should have put in there. I also should have put some more research maybe in behind what I was saying.
Well, no, you were fine, because you didn't have to do that. Remember, we talked. So I just want to clarify for the board what Danielle and I talked about. She's a very busy student. She's doing her job. I expressed to her that perhaps I could help her with her job just by sharing with her some of the background information. Also, that if there were issues, I could help resolve them. So this is her report. We try not to work in rumors. We try to work in concerns. We try to work in questions, some of those things. So that was the only ask I made was it a rumor? Could we make it a concern so that we could take action on it? Sometimes it's hard to take action on rumors. It's not hard to take action on concerns. So I just would like that because maybe that'll help Samantha as well, that I put out that I could help her. And so I did. And so we're going to work together, right?
Yes.
Yes. So that's what we decided.
I just want to say, on behalf of the board, and I think I can speak for the board, we really are very grateful to Danielle for the efforts and the amount of energy and time you put into this position, because you've really raised it to a whole other level from what we've experienced up to this point. And I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And who knows for cool signs on all the hallways and stuff.
Yeah, that's my only thing. I gotta let people know as well that they can't tell me stuff the day of the board meetings, because I had some stuff brought to my attention today, and I'm like, I can't exactly bring stuff up the day of because the board report's already sent in. So that's just one thing I have to notify people about.
We'll get you through that stuff.
Samantha, I think that you've been refreshing and very balanced. And just to clarify your concern, I don't think you ever brought any negative light to our school district in any of your comments. And I personally think that if you feel that you're being censored, that you should definitely speak to us about that, because the purpose of your role is for the board to have a student view and voice for us to understand what students are thinking. And censoring that does not serve the purpose at all.
Okay, next on the agenda is a capital project proposal.
Okay, so per the two things that the board has been discussing about the capital project, the estimated timeline was to make the consideration for the proposal for phase one of the capital project, to take it to a public vote, and also for the, is it just that?
No, there's more.
Thank you.
So that
There's
was the
three of
first,
them.
this
Right.
one was East Middle School.
Right, there's East Hill Middle School and High School.
Yes.
So we have with us, in case we have any questions, Matt Monahan from SEI regarding phase one of the proposed capital project. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Under the first item of East Hill Complex is, there's a thing called code issues. And one of the things that I didn't see under code issues, and I just had a question about, was we had a question raised last year about the physical education teachers' room having mold in it that was bothering the teachers there, and I was just wondering why it's not one of the things we're considering to do, to address.
We can certainly look at that sort of item in terms of adding. I'm just going to see if that's something that we left off. Did we look at that? I just don't think we had that on the list, so that's something we can certainly look at and apply a number to. There's
Yeah, I know
no-
this is not a final list, and that will come later, but I certainly like it to be considered for that final list, if it is an issue. It certainly was a
Absolutely.
concern of the physical education department at the time.
No, it wasn't.
And a related question on the code issues is, I think I raised this last time. I didn't know what these were. I know one of the nurses' offices, there's a water fountain problem that got turned off as a part of the lead thing. And so I want to make sure that if we're doing code issues, that those sorts of things are in here so that, you know, the school is full functioning from that perspective. We don't have drinking fountains shut off anymore, or whatever the case may be, because of things that we've found were wrong.
Absolutely. So the process, if I can address that a little bit, is we took the building condition survey that was submitted in 2016, and that was the base, really the base document to work off of. As we move through, and we develop a budget, and prior to a referendum, we build in addition to the line items that we've identified and put costs to specifically, we also build in contingencies for just those kinds of things, design contingencies. Because your design, prior to the vote, your design is not done. Your design doesn't happen until the public votes to authorize that you can spend the money. So we built these budgets in a way that allows you, because you don't want to pay for design prior to having authorization. So we build in contingencies to allow for that kind of thing. We don't have contingencies to say, oh, well, now let's do some sort of addition or large additional scope like that. But we do have budget for things like mold or water fountains or other issues that for some reason might not be on that building condition survey list, might not necessarily be on our list that we have right now, but we will We do have budget for that, and we will pick those up. For instance, I'm writing these down right now.
So can you just, this is my first time through this kind of spending thing, so for my education purposes, when does it get finalized where we are kind of looking at the list and saying, yeah, I think that's caught everything now?
Well, what happens is, as you move forward to a vote, if you've all had a chance to take a look at the items that are on the list right now, they're basically, maintenance code upgrades. There's not a lot of additional program items on this. It really is about taking care of your facilities and getting them ready for the future. Taking care of things before they become an expensive problem that you have to do without state aid. So what would happen is, if we're comfortable with the budgets and the scope, the general scope as it is right now, the board would go ahead and really authorize a vote to happen. We would be, as we move up to the vote date, there may be issues that, like just came up tonight, mold, lead in some water fountains. We may do a public presentation where someone brings up an issue that none of us thought of, that just makes a lot of sense to look at and make sure we cover in the vote. As long as we've got the contingency, we do have contingency dollars in here, because as architects for school projects, you cannot spend any more money than you have authorized by the voters. So we have to make sure that we've got a budget for design contingency items, but they're not going to be big scope items. They're going to be just the kind of things we just talked about. Otherwise, the scope needs to be pretty well set, because when we vote, we need to be sure that if we tell the voters these are the items we're going to hit, that we hit those items for the budget that we say we're going to hit them for. So we're covered under the contingency right now that's built into the project for just that kind of thing. And we can build those in as we lead up to the vote. I mean, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, look at the mold issue, identify it, make sure that we're covered, and add that to our boards and our presentations as we move forward. And if we have lead in water fountains, same thing there.
Okay, I have just two other questions on the great room floor tiles. I know we've talked about this before, but what I would like to ask going forward is, I know we have a wide range of possibilities there, and I would like to ask your help, not tonight, but going forward, in assessing the pluses and minuses of going with terrazzo versus linoleum, and what would help us to make the decision about which amount of money to spend on that.
I can certainly do that, and we can get into detail. The quick answer is life cycle cost. If we put in a VCT tile, it's going to be a lot less money installed initially, but the life cycle cost of that floor is going to be higher than an epoxy terrazzo, which is more to install initially, but over the life of the floor, much less maintenance, much less cost. So those are decisions.
Because of stripping and waxing.
Exactly, exactly. So we can give you those answers, and we can
make recommendations.
And make recommendations, and maybe we do want to go with a VCT, but that gives us the opportunity to have those choices.
And then my last question was on the thermal solar for the pool. It said requires verification.
What does that mean? Thermal solar for a pool, what we've got budgeted is an active indirect system. So basically it's a closed loop system. It's got a heat exchanger. It uses glycol so that it doesn't freeze, because we have big fluctuations in temperature. It's an active system, so it's got pumps It coordinates and integrates with your existing pool heating system because we can't depend on it. You know, if we get 3 weeks of darkness in the middle of the winter, it's not gonna work. And the controllers for that, it's a complex system. So as we look at this, and it's an expensive system if you look at that. So what you would be doing with that is you'd be making a green, sustainable choice to help offset. It does have a payback on the system. The system eventually pays for itself with energy savings. It's a little longer term payback. If you had a pool at your house and you just wanted to heat it in the summer, you might do a passive system that's direct, and it might be $3,000 or $4,000, and it might pay for itself in a few years as opposed to 16 years. So these are all things that we need to make sure we have the budget covered, but we still need to have discussions with you, with the district about, how far do we want to go with it, that sort of thing. So that's really the verification piece there.
Thank you.
I have a couple others. One was video cameras in general. It seems like a big ticket item for the schools. So I'm just curious, because that technology has gotten cheaper over time rather than more expensive. So are we planning that these would be wireless systems, or are we running wires? And this seems really expensive to put cameras in.
Well, it is, and cameras are something that we have a pretty good handle on because we do a lot of them. There are only a handful of installers that are licensed in New York State to do these things in schools. And you're correct in that what's happening is the camera technology is getting so good now that you actually need less cameras. Because what you can do is you can have one camera on, say, a parking lot, and it's a very high resolution camera, and if something happens off in a corner, you can zoom in and read a license plate 200-300 yards away. So in that regard, yes, it is. The costs are coming down somewhat, and again, these numbers are the budgets that we need to make sure we can build your system in, but we will need to do a whole security plan on how this gets put together and what we end up doing. So I think at this point you don't want to reduce your budgets.
I understand that.
Prior to
Are we looking at this from a modern technology thing where it would be all wireless, all able to be saved, kept, all that kind of stuff? Or?
Yes, typically they're not wireless at this point. What we're doing is power over Ethernet. So the cameras are plugged in with just an Ethernet cable, and they're powered by an Ethernet cable. So in the old days, we used to have to run power and some sort of a cable to get the video back. So power over Ethernet with storage, and that's really where a lot of the expense is, depending on how much storage we have, how long we save the data for before we start overwriting it. So that's really, that end of it is, it's really an IT solution that can be pretty big on the head end.
My last question, and then I have one suggestion. The configuration of the middle school, is that another item that we are building a budget, but we're going to decide how we do that?
Exactly. We have a budget. We know, based off of a certain square footage of renovation, alterations, and a certain square footage of, so we've got vestibules, security. So we now, when we go into the design, after the vote passes, we get into the design phase, and we actually have design meetings to determine exactly what you.
Because it seems like there's a lot of different ways to do that particular aspect of this. And the costs for the different options would be very different, I would think. So I would want to make sure we're able to have that conversation.
Absolutely. That would take place once we have a positive vote. Next day, we would start design meetings. Through the facilities committee, we would establish a group of people that would be involved. We would listen, review, collect data, and provide options based on the input that we get.
So my suggestion is we probably should take canopy off, because that's a phase 2 or 3 thing now, so I don't want any voter to feel like we misled them.
Thank you.
That they were getting canopies.
That's a very good point.
And we're not doing canopies right now.
And that's something we need to be very sensitive about, because if we tell them we're gonna do something, very important that we do it. So, and if we've left something in that shouldn't be there, we need to take it out.
The last comment I have is more towards after they presented last time, and I'm not sure how we addressed this. This was a lot of money until we got to the end and said, okay, how is it going to be funded? And how much is it really going to cost our taxpayers? And that's missing from this and from the
proposition.
The propositions.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I noticed that too.
And the propositions. So I know that we can't, again, mislead anyone, but we also, I think, need to figure out how we give a point of view that shows the balanced fiduciary responsibility that we as a board were looking at this from and saying why we think this is a good thing to do, right? Because if somebody just looks at this, I forget what the bottom number is, $5 million and something, they would say, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. But when we walk through how it would be funded, when we got down to the bottom line of what it's really going to cost the taxpayers, it's a very different picture because of state assistance and a whole bunch of other stuff. Somehow we have to get that woven into, I think, this information.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
You've made an excellent point, and it's 4.98 million right now. So what happens is, as we looked at this, we were very, very conscious of keeping this as a tax neutral proposition. And your bond counsel puts together your resolution, and they have very strict guidelines, legal guidelines about what they can say. But as we put out, as we do public meetings, as we put out information, if the board decides to move ahead with this toward the vote, it's very important that in the materials that we present, that we say that very clearly. This is a tax neutral proposition. We can use some of the information that we got from fiscal advisors and say here is the actual cost, and then the offset, and here's why it is tax neutral. I don't know, Leah, do you think anything?
Eric's already been working with Ben Myers, our communications person. That is already all in the works and all ready to go pending the board vote, with all of those things that you were asking about.
My point, I guess, is we're going to vote as a board, and our board responsibility is as a fiduciary in this particular case. And it's showing one side of the equation. And except for the very end of that last meeting when they were here, we haven't talked about both sides of the equation. And honestly, my own opinion, when I first saw the packet that I read through, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so expensive. Until we got to that very last segment of our meeting, and then I was like, okay, this sounds reasonable now. You know, so I'm concerned that we're not presenting that picture even to ourselves to vote on this. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I agree with you. After reading through everything, that's the biggest thing I picked up on. Exactly what you're saying. So you didn't bring it up. I was ready to as well.
Well,
Mark?
the thing that, I've raised that as well prior, and legally, as was stated, it has to be written a certain way. But as soon as that gets put out there, after we vote for it, along with that legally defined resolution, will be our publicity to go along with it to explain the thing that you just raised. And if we don't do that, we're shooting ourselves in the foot.
So I guess what I'm asking for, as a part of our discussion, to then say, yes, we want to vote for this and pass a resolution, is we should at least discuss that other piece of it again. And I don't have those numbers. I know that we did them at the end of that meeting, but
Right, yeah, we talked about it at one of those meetings. We were going to use a couple of different funds that we already have available to us. So we're going to use 38,000 of Excel funds that the state still has sitting out there, Excel aid from years ago. The resolution tonight is using 51,000 of an old capital reserve fund, making it a new one because it expires after 10 years. So we're going to use that, and then we have about 180,000 in a debt service fund that we're going to use, and that also has been sitting out there for a while now, from years ago. And then also in the resolution later is the authorization of the board to make this new capital reserve fund and the authority to put money into it as you want.
We discussed fund balance as well, how much out of the fund balance or?
Right, and that's what we're gonna discuss after.
what do you mean by after, just so I get?
Well, once the capital reserve is
Established?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah. Because it goes with the capital project, so
And
it does make it very confusing with all the different pots of money and.
I think, well, I think that was the last step, right? When we looked at the new cap reserve that we established, there was a matching component to it, there was a whole bunch of other things that when we got to the end, the taxpayer impact was a tiny fraction of this.
Yeah, it was, if all that happens and everything is approved and the voters approve it, then you have the ability to put more money into this reserve to help fund this project. You can authorize, we talked about authorizing $750,000. If we did that, the taxpayers only paid $2.25 over the course of the project per a $100,000 home. That's what the fiscal advisors told us. If you authorize to do more than the $750,000, it could be zero.
And what were we thinking we needed to put in at this point? I don't remember that figure from.
What we needed to put in.
As a district, in other words, there's no, because we're getting aid and things that help with this.
Right, and we don't know the aid yet, so that's another, we won't know that number until the project is finalized.
But we've got to have
So-
estimates, right?
Yeah, and we have the estimates.
Okay.
So that's all being put in the newsletter that's going out next week.
So do we have those numbers?
In the newsletter, yeah, we do. I don't have them in front of me. I don't have the state aid number.
Do you want me to give these to you? I do have this.
Yeah, what is on that sheet?
This is what fiscal advisors put together. They do have a state aid line, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit, it's not like right on this sheet. I know on the newsletter, we're putting out that state aid is 4.1 million.
Okay, so 4.9
Yeah.
minus
If it's
4.1 brings us to 0.8, and then we can put 7 out of that 0.8,
Then we use all those other
800,000.
funds also.
Then we use all those other
Yeah.
funds. That's what I thought. I thought we were down to about $500,000, which is like $2 a taxpayer.
No, we were down
for a
to,
$100,000
if we use all
house.
that money, like I just said, we're down to 121,000 left
Okay.
over the life of the bond.
121,000. So we use these extra funds that we haven't touched, that we had sitting there for purposes like this, and that gets us down to under 150,000, so call it somewhere between 100 and 200, because we're estimating, right?
Yep.
And that, we think, is gonna cost the taxpayer an average of $1 per 100,000 of assessed value.
Yeah, $2.55.
Okay. That, I think, and I'm sorry to belabor this.
I think I'm
But
following your
from
train
a
of thought.
financial perspective, we have a cost, and we're being asked to vote on whether we should spend money. We should know where the funding is coming from to vote on that. That's all I'm trying to make a point of. And thank you. That's all I needed.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Next on the agenda is a discussion on the veterans tax exemption.
Thank you.
So last spring, we decided to revisit this, and we received a community response from the budget survey.
It was overwhelmingly positive.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Leah. This is what, I read all this, and this is what I was,
Yeah, and
I knew
so
we'd covered this
I
too.
knew,
Thank you.
I got some updated numbers from the county, and that was the sheet that I just handed out.
Okay.
It's very similar to the one that we have up there. That was in the budget survey results in the little narrative at the top.
Mhm.
And then I just gave some other information. The current true value tax rate right now is 19.73. Just an estimated true value tax rate, if this exemption was adopted, goes up to 19.99. And then the next thing that I put on here is something called the current tax effort ratio, which is the ability for a district's residents to pay their school taxes, so our residents, what they can pay, what they can afford. And what it is the residential tax levy divided by the district residents' income. So it's our total tax levy over our income for the district. And as this number reaches the number 4, the closer to number 4, the more burdensome taxes are to our district residents. So below I put what ours is, 3.6, and then I listed some of the other surrounding districts' number. So if you look, ours is 3.6, so we're close to 4. Fort Plain, 4.5. So their district residents have a hard time paying their taxes because the taxes are high. Fonda 3.4, and then so on. Lowest is Johnstown. 2.5. So they have the people there in order to pay their taxes are pretty low in Johnstown taxes. So this is just some information to all consider with all of this, the adoption of the veterans exemption.
So clarifying question, is this
Sure.
3.6 before any change? That's what we are currently?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have any idea how much of an impact we're talking about on that 3.6?
I know in the questionnaire that we had the residents fill out when they voted, the estimate was that it would cost somewhere between $25 and $35 and $100,000
It's still.
if we adopted
Yeah.
this. Is that still
Yeah.
in the ballpark? Okay. And my own personal thing, especially based on the survey results, I would be favorably inclined to approve this. Do you know how many other towns have districts rather have,
Just Amsterdam.
so that's just my 2 cents on it.
So out of this list, only Amsterdam has done the veterans? So,
Any other comments? From the attorneys?
yeah, I read that. What was that?
The process is board consideration and discussion. Prior to adopting a resolution authorizing this exemption, school districts must first hold a public hearing on the matter. The hearing and the passage of resolution have to be done in separate meetings. Our attorneys recommend noticing and holding the hearing at a specified time, closing the hearing, and then opening a regular meeting to pass the resolution authorizing the exemption. And that's in the documentation you were sent.
Yeah, so. Do you want a motion to take that action?
Right now it's a discussion, but
But don't we have to, at some point, say we want to do these things?
to follow through on the
Right.
process. Would you like to make a motion now? Do I hear a motion?
I would make a motion.
Scott?
Second?
Mark? Okay, so we are making the motion to move ahead with the process to conduct the board, or a public hearing on the matter of the veterans tax exemption. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain? No? Oh, so then we would need to set the date for the public hearing. Our next board meeting is in 4 weeks on November, on my calendar. November 9th. Would you like to do it then?
Does that look okay?
Mark?
I think she did the letter from the attorney that said that we need to do it 4 months ahead of March 1st. So that would not be, that would be late, right? December, January, February, March. But it has to
Oh,
be
March
4 months
1st.
before the 1st. So you have to do it.
No, the action is taken at least 90 days before the
90
tax,
days,
90
okay.
days. So
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
that's okay. Before the taxable status date, which is around March 1st.
So
So-
we would be okay.
So I'd understand it correctly, you would have a public hearing before
Board meeting.
the board meeting.
So
Is that
we'd all
good
have
for
to be
everybody?
here at 6 then that night? Is that what we would have to do? Be here for 6 that night instead of 7?
Not sure how long it would.
Typically, we've done public hearings a half hour before the board.
Half
Half
hour?
hour.
Okay,
Can everybody be here at 6:30 on the night?
I think so. Did we need a motion on the capital project proposal?
That's, it's here.
Right.
I
just wanted to
do,
make sure that you.
Since we're getting into, do we have anything else on that discussion?
For the veterans taxes?
Okay. So going back to our agenda, we do have things to approve tonight, and one of the items was to accept the audit from Weston Company. So do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Any discussion?
The only discussion, I think, is from the management letter. We need to make sure that we go back and look at the few things that they said we pay attention to.
Yeah, we have to write a response to that, which, we'll do that, and then you have to approve that also, so.
All in favor?
Aye.
Again? Abstain? first letter A would be the minutes, and we can do this separately if you'd like.
I would just because I wasn't here last time.
Okay, so do I have a motion to accept the September 14th minutes?
Second.
Any discussion?
I need to look at it to see which one I had discussion on my own.
Okay.
It wasn't that.
Okay. We'll vote then, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Again? Abstain? And the September 28th minutes, can I have a motion to accept the September 28th minutes?
Motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion on September 28th?
Yeah, there was two things. First, at the end, I just happened to catch a typo of misspelling of Roman. I'm trying to think what it was now.
On September 28th.
I'm pretty sure it was September 28th. Anyway, toward the end of one of them, Roman is misspelled.
Okay,
I just
all right.
caught it in passing.
How about
Okay.
that?
And her first name is Rachel.
But the other thing that I did want to note on there, because we are trying to keep track of actions, as a part of the curriculum development process, we did have some discussion, and I don't want us to lose track of, we have to figure out how to calendar that so that the board and the administration are together on how we go about making sure that we get the timing sequence down for curriculum development work.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to add, if we could, to make sure that we're mindful of advanced placement courses as well. I don't know if you've read the Eclipse. They were talking about rural schools, how we're, in general, throughout New York State, making progress with advanced placement courses, and we're catching up to suburban and city schools. And I would just like to make sure that we are mindful whenever we're looking at curriculum to make sure that the advanced placement courses are solid and enrollment is solid, and we're not at any point going to diminish the importance of any of those courses. I don't think we are, but I just want to make sure that that's an important opportunity for kids. We follow up on that.
On the reinstatement, you got me voting aye and abstain. Oh, okay.
Maybe Rachel's name should be where my name is.
Okay.
That's done September 28th.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess the misspelling must have been on the other one. I'm sorry.
That's, I'll proof, I usually proof them again good before I.
It was spelled Vroamn.
Okay.
That's why it caught me.
Oh, and
because
I
I was like,
didn't
okay,
notice.
what was that?
I can read them over and over and over and still.
Oh, I know.
I just want to be clear what you were saying. I mean, you're not criticizing anything in the minutes, but just.
No, yeah,
just
just
suggesting
as a
that
comment.
we don't let it drop and.
Yeah, because there was
Yeah.
nothing about the actions that we had talked about, so I want to make sure that in light of our other part of our conversation of the calendar and actions to make sure we're bringing back up, that we didn't lose that. That was all.
Yep.
And then we'll take a vote on the September 28th minutes with the correction to the spelling. And then note that Cheryl said. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Again? Abstain? Mark?
Abstain from that, okay.
Next on the agenda is the budget transfer schedule, number 2. May I have a motion to accept it?
Can we do a consent agenda?
It's up to,
Is there any reason why we can't do a consent?
no, there isn't. I was sure isn't.
where would you like to do the consent from B through?
E through J.
No.
Okay, so that's what I was asking.
Oh, not all of them, no. If you go to, you could go to D right now.
B through D?
Yes. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? From B through D. I'm sorry, Mark?
On the bills, I have 5 little questions, some of which were answered, but I'm thinking other people might have the same question, so I'll just raise it again. E-math, never heard of it before, it's just, that's 53,670. Just wondering what it is.
It was for some middle school algebra books. It's just a math company.
Then I saw Canajoharie Golf Club and Country Club, I thought it was going golfing. I learned that that was for the golf club, the golf team. Then 53,692, Hanson Aggregates, $8,000. Never heard of it, wanted to know what that was about.
That was for, asphalt, tons of.
Oh,
when
maybe
did
putting
Tons
down
of
water.
crusher and asphalt.
Crush
that was
it.
right.
Maybe
We
putting the
did.
wa-
Stone,
the water
I don't
out,
know,
I guess,
stones,
yes.
I don't know what it
So part of the paving.
is. Yeah. Something having to do with asphalt.
Fourth one was 53,703, McPhee Memorials.
Those are the bricks that have the names in them. Right
It's the
outside
senior
front
bricks
here.
out in front of the high
Yeah,
school.
that was for 2 classes, I believe. It was 16 and
And the last one was 53,725, Vince Iacobucci, $8,000.
Yeah,
yes,
had
that was the pool work over the summer. They regrouted the pool
Okay.
and emptied it.
Did all the repairs, every 5 years.
And he doesn't have a business, we're paying him directly.
He does have a business. But yeah, we paid him directly, so we did a 1099. Yeah.
I had a couple others. School specialty, 8850.
Yeah, almost every single teacher orders their supplies from that company.
Oh, so it's like normal school supplies?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep.
And McGraw-Hill is 77,000. I know who McGraw-Hill is, but I
Yes,
just,
that
that
was
was a
the
lot, so I
curriculum
wanted.
that we spoke about last year, for the elementary.
It was
Wonders.
is it the English
Reading.
program?
Yeah.
Okay. I hope that's what it was. Okay. And then Bud's Refrigeration, the only question was, did we have a problem? It was $11,000 and plus dollars, so did we have something break somewhere that was big?
That
No?
was, they remade, or they refigured a cooler into a freezer at the high
Okay.
school, so for a little more food.
We get, because we are receiving more government surplus food, it was an unused refrigerator that we turned into a freezer so we could accept the food.
Great. And this one I asked because I didn't know who they were. FWB Web Company.
Yeah, we've used,
7210.
yep, we use them a lot. This was for fixing the water line at the Nellis that
Okay.
was broken last year.
Okay. On the general fund 15, I just couldn't remember what GFMN was for receipts. It was big numbers, like $900,000 in 2 different increments.
What are you looking at? The
Just said-
treasurer's report? Is that what you're
General
looking at?
fund 15,
The treasurer's.
treasurer's report, it just says GFMN, and I couldn't remember what that was.
Oh, that's just general fund money market account.
Okay.
Transfer?
I don't remember if it was transferred, but it was big money, it was 400,000,
Yes,
times
yep.
500,000. And then I had a question why MVP was paying us, because it was down as a receipt, two of them for, one was like 11,000 something, one was like 12,000 something.
That is for, MVP handles all our retiree insurance payments, so the retirees actually pay the payments to them and then they give us the money. So we don't have to track it all. So they deposit it right into our.
Okay. That was it for that. Thank you.
I just have one more on the treasurer's report on the federal aid fund. I've never seen a minus number before.
Yeah, it happens once in a
Are we
while.
bouncing checks or?
No, it was just, there was a transfer not made, so the amount of outstanding checks at the end of the month, even though they weren't cashed yet, the amount outstanding, which is good to me.
We didn't bounce anything.
Yeah, once in a while that happens.
Any other?
I just never saw that before. It was kind of.
Yeah, sometimes when
Caught
their
my
checks are done at the end of the month, like for a big amount, and the transfer is not done in that same month, just that amount of outstanding makes it big.
Any other discussion for B through D? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Again? Abstain? Okay, next is letter E, lead evaluator certifications. May I have a motion to certify Deborah Grimshaw and Chris DiPaolo as lead evaluators?
Motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Again? Abstain? Letter F is the MVP Flexible Benefit Plan document. May I have a motion to accept the MVP Flexible Benefit Plan document?
I'll make the motion.
In a second?
Second. Oh, go ahead. Sure.
Any discussion on it?
Yeah, I wasn't sure why we were looking at this now, because it was January 1st.
We got it over the summer, they didn't give it to us until, I think, August,
Okay.
don't know why, but that's when we received
It seems really retro at this point.
it. Yeah.
So,
Probably someone told them they had to get all of these out and signed by all the schools.
Because it's for this year that's gonna end in a couple months, right?
Yeah, we haven't actually, we haven't done one of these, it hasn't been updated since 2008. So that's probably why
Yeah,
we had to do it, and a lot of things have changed since then.
The
with
legal stuff
with the
has all
plan,
changed,
so,
yeah.
and the IRS,
Mhm.
so, that's why we have to do it now. The amounts went up, the limits went up, the rollover amounts have changed, so it's just updating what's already happening.
Are there any significant changes that we need to, are there any significant changes that we need to be aware of, or need to consider? I know, this is some mandated changes, but is there
Right.
anything that we should be concerned
The
about?
plan is really the IRS plan. You know, we follow what the IRS tells us we can follow.
Do we, because this also includes like the penny care and
Yes.
flexible spending
Yeah.
healthcare, right?
Yep.
So do we offer the full max limits that the IRS allows to our employees?
Yes, I believe so.
What's our history of people taking the max before they've paid for it and leaving?
I don't know.
What, another way of looking at, do we ever wind up with a negative balance?
We wouldn't.
Well, you could. If people left.
If someone left, yes, and if, like, we had a couple people signed up last year that they knew they were going to retire in June. So I worked with them and, had all the money for the year taken out in those 6 months. And I said, you have to also spend all that in those 6 months before you leave.
So they were.
So when it
really
happens
nice.
like that, we work through it, yeah.
They were really nice, because they don't
Yeah.
have to do that. They can say they're gonna take 5,000
Right.
and spend it all in
So-
January and leave, and that's it. You're
But
stuck.
if I tell MVP that they're gone, they will no longer reimburse them for anything.
After their termination
Yeah.
date, right?
Yeah, so I worked with them and it was fine. But other people, I can't really think of anybody that's left that still had one of these programs.
Is it, the IRS limit is the max we can allow, but you don't have to allow that. That's why I was asking if people were actually taking advantage of us that way. You don't have to give the IRS max.
We do like the 2,000 $2,550, that's what we allow for
Okay.
everybody.
All right.
To take, I mean, there's not that many people that go that high, but there's some.
Mark?
Just for the board's knowledge, last year, we, some members of CUSE and along with the board and Debbie went to a meeting at BOCES that talked about a high deductible plan that they're using there, and they're very happy with it. And I just wanted to alert the board that we're going to be approaching CUSE to get together with them and kind of discuss it and see if it's something that we might want to consider, at some, hopefully sometime soon. And because it may be something that would be beneficial both to the district and to the CUSE members in terms of the amount of money that it would cost to have those benefits. Obviously, this would be a big change in the way things are set up, but it's something I think it's worth exploring. I think we all agreed on that after we went to that meeting. It was pretty compelling, I thought, and certainly worth us discussing. I just wanted to just make you aware of that.
Well, the other option that we found out about from MVP last year is another option as well that was much cheaper than current healthcare offering that we have that MVP could make available to us for our employees.
One of the big selling points for this high deductible plan was you're not tied into it. In other words, next month they tell you they want to raise the rates, you say, we're going shopping. And so it really, you really have some bargaining chips with the insurance companies that you can shop around. Whereas when you're tied into it for fixed periods of time, if they want to raise the rates, you're kind of stuck with them. But this is all stuff that we want to consider, and obviously it'll be an ongoing discussion.
I just want to make one comment. The employee contribution was quite different than what ours is right now.
So anyhow, I just wanted to kind of throw it out there so that you're not blindsided when all of a sudden, hopefully we'll come up with something.
All I was saying is we might want to also look at the other option that MVP talked to us last year about, because it was significantly cheaper than our current option, which might help employees from an affordability perspective as well.
Can I just add one quick thing? I have a PowerPoint on that, if you'd like that, which explains the difference between the two. I could forward that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Again? Abstain? Next on the agenda is, may I have the vote proposition? This is letter G. May I have a motion to approve the vote proposition for the capital project vote on December 5th?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I've just got a comment, and I don't want to keep bringing it up, but I hear what Scott was saying. We are planning on doing the, marketing campaign before we actually bring this up to a vote. Is there any way, and probably this is worded exactly the way it needs to be worded, but is there any way we can put, with an anticipated cost to taxpayers around, you know what I mean? I didn't think you could, but
Right.
that was kind of
That's what the,
I figured.
that's what the PR is.
Yeah, because I hear what Scott's saying, is kind of putting the cart before the horse, but I think it's gonna be hard for a lot of people to grapple with without actually understanding this is what it's gonna
But
cost.
that's what the PR does.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
has to be.
I figured as much.
Right.
It's
and
gotta be
this-
the letter of the law,
Yes.
which is fine, all right, I kind of figured that, but
Yeah, I
doesn't
figured
hurt to
that
ask.
too, I figured that too for the resolutions.
Yeah.
Right.
My point was about discussion for us to vote and approve proposition. We need to see both sides of the equation.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Again? Abstain? Next on the agenda is letter H, capital reserve fund resolution. May I have a motion to approve the capital reserve fund resolution?
I'll I'll second it.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed the
Dr.
first.
Dot. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Letter I. Next on the agenda is the Fulmont Head Start Memorandums of Understanding. So may I have a motion to approve the Fulmont Head Start Memorandums of Understanding?
I'll make the motion.
In a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I thought we already did this back in the summer when we were putting the classes in place. I didn't go back in history and try to find it, but
It was an agreement between that we will provide the CPSE services, that we will be the district that.
Talk a little louder, my hearing's not what I want, I'm just brain stuff.
You're fine. That was an agreement for stating that we would follow up and be the, in charge of the CPSE aspect of, so if they recommend a student for CPSE and so on, and the parents follow through, that we are the district. It's a formality. That's different. That's my end of it. This is
Okay.
something different, because we like to spread it all out.
all right. This is the actual pre-K 3 agreement and the UPK agreement, right? That they're providing that service to us.
Mm-hmm.
So they started without us having an agreement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Pretty risque.
Any other discussion?
This was, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
there was some grants associated with this, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes, entirely grant funded.
Entirely.
That's what I thought, I just wanted to make sure.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Letter J is the HFM BOCES substitute list. May I have a motion to approve the September and October BOCES substitute list?
Motion. Second.
Any discussion?
I was happy to see Kathy Van Loan on the list. That was great.
All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain? And before we go into executive, because we don't have that second meeting this month, I know there were a few things that we discussed from the last meeting. Ask them to make some written follow-up reports on items, just so we have time to read through some of these things that we've been talking about, so it didn't get missed before the next meeting, so. If you just wanna take one.
Take the folder, it's all.
Take the whole folder.
Yes.
Pick your color.
Oh.
I'll pick blue. But there are a few items in there that we've been talking about, and I just,
Oh, I'll take two. Is that blue?
just so they didn't get lost because we don't have a second item.
So you want us to look at
Read
these?
through it
And if there's any other items we thought that were out there, let you know?
and hoping to discuss them, yeah,
Okay.
oh, and the calendar as well.
So
Thank you for refreshing my memory, I don't have my.
Do you need me to refresh it some more?
Please.
So there are 4 items in your folder: lead remediation. I'm gonna forget what they are. The honors by contract report, the Cantor grade targets, and I put in some draft superintendent goals because we want to keep that rolling. So certainly Chris and Rachel can take a look at that, but that's there for everybody. The other piece that when Patty and I met with Rachel, we had discussed got some information from Jamie about how to do a calendar. Our NISBA facilitator.
Thank you. I was trying to place Jamie.
I know, and I was trying to think of his last name, but I can't think of his, McPherson. So he provided us with some information. Rachel asked Patty and I to put together a draft calendar for the board to consider. It is an annual planning calendar, so that there would be a structure to put things on to, so that as topics came up, you can decide when you want to circle back to them.
He gave us a sample.
Sample
Yeah,
template for that, so we're
I
working
think he's
on.
very responsive and we forward all the
Good.
materials anyway, so that was,
Great.
I was encouraged by that.
Good.
Okay.
So do you want us to, because I have lists in my notes too, so do you want us to give you our input back if there's other things that we think should be in this folder
I
at this
think I
point?
need to discuss that with you, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be-
You might ignore it, but I'll leave it.
Exactly.
Add it back so we want it, add it on the calendar when we get the show.
Okay. All right, so right now we need a motion to adjourn into executive session for the purpose of discussing qualifications and employment of particular persons and or deliberations on or discussion of any matter being confidential by federal or state law.
Make a motion.
Second.
So we'll go into executive session at 8.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks, good night, ready, camera?
Yeah.
Thank you.